Hello and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below-average Star Wars. I'm Peter and I'm joined by Ian. Ian, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, really good, man. Obviously, it's tough times in the world with COVID-19 on the loose and everyone's social isolating, but we've still got Star Wars to talk about and consume.
We do, mate, yeah. It's keeping me going at the moment.
It is indeed. Same here, buddy, same here. So this week, just to get straight at it, we've decided to review the Kanan comic book series, which started in 2015. And it was essentially a comic book series that was released to sort of tell the prequel story of Kanan and Jarrus from the Star Wars Rebels TV series. And the reason why we decided to do this is because, obviously, in that Clone Wars trailer that dropped just before Clone Wars returned, obviously we saw sort of the Jedi Council speaking in holograms, and we saw Jedi Master Deepa Bilbar, and the padawan was next to her, who is, of course, a young Kanan.
Caleb
Caleb Dume. And obviously we get sort of that story maybe in these comics. So that's why we chose to review it. It's connected that way. And it was also, I mean, these comics, obviously, they're written by Greg Weisman. And I remember reading these and absolutely loving them. Like, I think the Star Wars comics have been really good, but like these ones in particular have been a top level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, these are comics are in my top three, I would say. Yeah, they're really, really good. So
again, it gives me just an excuse for you to revisit these. So that's been quite cool to sort of go back and read them. So I think how we're going to do it is we're going to split in like two parts. So I'm going to sort of take the lead on Volume 1, which is called The Last Padawan, and then Ian is going to take the lead on Volume 2, First Blood. The comic series only ran for 2 volumes, which sort of makes sense with it being a prequel because it pretty much runs up to, obviously, Rebels, and you get the story continued there. Which is a shame because, like I said, it was a really, really good book, but as you know, you kind of run stories forever, especially if you're telling it in other mediums as well. So yeah, I'm just going to start off by sort of, obviously, Volume 1, The Last Padawan, was written by Greg Weisman, who was also a producer on Star Wars Rebels, especially the early seasons. So obviously he writes these books here, so obviously he knows Kanan quite a lot based on obviously how connected he was to the series. And the art is done by Pepe Larraz and Jacopo Cabagni, and the colorist is David Curell. And a strange one here, obviously this is like 2015, but like, so the story group members involved for Lucasfilm were Rain Roberts, Pablo Hidalgo, and Lee Lin Chi. So just the 3 sort of story executives there. Obviously, as we know now, there's quite a lot of names there, and a few of those guys have moved up into more senior positions. So I thought it was quite cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I said, I can't recommend this comic high enough, and I can't wait to talk about the issues. To be honest, they're great.
Yep. So I'm just going to start off by reading sort of all the comics have like a crawl text in the front of them, similar to the movies. So I'm just going to start off by reading the crawl text from Kanan Volume 1. The Last Padawan. It is a dark time for the galaxy. It's been years since the fall of the Republic, when Chancellor Palpatine gave Order 66, wiping out the peacekeeping Jedi Order and rising to the role of Emperor. Since then, the Emperor and his Imperial forces have ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. The people have lived under the yoke of Imperial oppression, and the sparks of rebellion have begun in secret. Small clusters of rebels have begun fighting for freedom. One such rebel band is home to Kanan Jarrus, a mysterious former Jedi who has spent years hiding his force powers and lightsaber. Not even his companions know his true past, and he was once a young Jedi Padawan named Caleb Dume, fighting in the Clone Wars under his master, Deepa Bilbar. So I sort of loved that. It was sort of like a good tie to sort of the Rebels TV show. And to me, when I was reading that crawl, the bit where it says, not even his companions know his true past, and that he hides his force powers in his lightsaber. When I read that sentence, it took me back to sort of that scene in Rebels when they're trying to save the Wookiees. And he's like, and he knows he has to ignite his lightsaber because to save the crew. And he's like, and Ezra asks him a question. I can't really ask somebody. And Kanan says to Ezra, he goes, something's about to happen that's not happened for like a long, long time.
Yeah, Ezra says to him, because Kanan's like, I think it's time we let people in on the secret. And Ezra's like, what secret? He's like, I think he's like, kid, everyone's about to find out the secret. And then obviously he ignites his lightsaber and
Yeah, it's a very powerful moment there. It's where he, not only is he sort of sacrificing himself, because as you know, the true path of the Jedi is sort of self-sacrifice without wanting anything in return. Is that, when he needs to save this crew, he needs to save the Wookiees, and the only way to do that is to ignite his lightsaber, which gives him a better chance in the battle, but it also confuses the enemy because they're like, "What, a Jedi? What? We haven't seen them in a long time."
Yeah, you can tell the stormtroopers' reaction that they gone into myth at this point.
Yeah, I mean, even the Agent Callus is like, "Oh, like I need to go and ring up the Inquisitor here because I don't want to deal with it." So it's sort of a selfless act by Kanan. Obviously, it would be an easier life for him if he didn't out himself, but he does out himself.
Yeah.
So just starting with the book, it starts off. What I really enjoyed about this book is it starts off like an episode of Rebels. So it's the Ghost crew on board the ship, and it's the way it's written is very Rebels. The way the different characters are talking is very much in their unique styles, which is very cool. And obviously, with Greg Weisman being a producer on the show, I think he wrote on the show as well, to be honest with you. But I don't know if they're sure. But so obviously he gets these guys and he's writing this, so he knows what he's doing. And they're going to be doing a milk run for the Talking Town refugees.
Yeah. Lothal, yeah.
Yep, the Talking Town refugees on Lothal, which is like a big plot in, I think, the first 2 seasons of Rebels.
Yeah, you see it in Rebels and then they end up burning it, don't they? Darth Vader ends up burning it to try and draw the rebels out in season 2.
It does indeed, yeah. So again, like the sort of, as we found out in the beginning of Rebels, the Ghost crew tend to be running errands to sort of get supplies, and it's usually food supplies and things like that. Sometimes weapons, but mainly things like food and stuff, which obviously like everyone needs to live. So they're going to do a milk run, and essentially what you find is on the planet Kala, and then it shows you Kanan's face, and then it cuts. The next panel's like a young Kanan, and it's like welcome to Kala, and it shows you like the war zone.
Yeah, 15 years prior to this, it shows obviously them in the Battle of Kala during the Clone Wars.
Yeah. So one of the things I like straight away, especially like so obviously I'm reading the trade paperback, so it's split into like 6. So like chapter 1's called Fight. And this would have been like 1 weekly issue. That's like straight away after sort of the Ghost crew introduction, and it's straight into the war zone. So you can say like this is young Kanan, because he does look different. He's young, like he's got his padawan braid, he's short hair, he's got his Jedi cloak on. And straight away, I've noticed the book sort of sets up 2 relationships. One is Kanan and the clones, and how like especially there's Captain Styles and there's Commander Grey.
Yeah,
who they must be like Commander Cody and Captain Rex for this battalion. Like Kenobi's and Anakin's was, like I said, Rex and Cody. And straight away, like these guys have a similar relationship with their Jedi, where like they've been fighting for like 3 years. So the friends, comrades, trust each other in battle, life and death. And the book sets that relationship up that deeper and we'll just call him Kanan, but like Caleb Dume was Kanan.
Jedi name.
Yeah, like have this like strong relationship with their clones, which is cool, and also that's a relationship between Kanan and his master, which is very cool, and it also shows you just how I wouldn't say powerful, but like how formidable Deepa is.
Yeah.
She's quite a thoughtful Jedi. She thinks quite a lot. She's obviously good with a lightsaber, but not necessarily as good as like Master Windu, for example. But like she's very controlled in her thoughts, and she seems like a very good strategist, is what we find out.
If I'm correct, I think Mace Windu was a Jedi Master. I think.
Oh, maybe. I didn't know that.
Pretty sure she is. He is.
That would be pretty cool. I'll have to look that one up once we're finished here. Learn something new every day. No, that would be good. So we end up with this battle on Kala, and sort of the Republic are trying to take a city held by the Separatists and General Cleve.
General Cleve, yeah.
And he looks pretty badass. He's got like a sort of an eye patch, but it's not an eye patch. It's like almost like a viewer. It gives him better eyesight.
Like a cybernetic type of eye type thing.
Yeah, and he's got I'm not sure what species he is, but he does have horns, but I don't think he's Deveronian. He's got pointy ears.
I have to look it up now, isn't
Yeah. But so they've got control of the city at the minute. You see the Jedi are coming in on the city.
and he knows that he's defeated, so he ends up surrendering the world to the Republic.
Yeah, basically, Deeper has outsmarted him, and the strategy's going to work. And he's like, I'm going to leave the planet. Gets his shuttle ready. He speaks to the sort of, he's called Gamut Key, and I think he's some sort of high up guy
he's the leader,
on Kala.
the Calorans.
So he says, I'm going to leave. And he's like, what do you mean you're going to leave? And he goes, nah, like the battle's lost. And I don't know, he doesn't want to be captured by the Republic, obviously.
Yeah.
And it also shows that maybe he doesn't truly believe in sort of what this...
Yeah.
I think maybe the separatist idea, I think, yes. But then once you actually get involved in it and you realise that, like, not all as it seems, and Dooku's keeping things secret and stuff like that, like, I think he probably thinks, like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. And then obviously this opportunity comes up here and he's like, nope, I'm leaving. See you there.
Yeah, he is a Deberonian, by the way.
He is? Oh, there you go. Well, I'm glad I'm right.
Yeah.
So essentially he leaves.
Essentially, as he leaves, he says, "Oh, I know you didn't like the Separatist alliance," and then he says, "Oh, we'll see how you like Republic tyranny," which is a good line as he's leaving.
Yeah, definitely, especially with what it becomes.
Because we all know deep down the Separatists is always going to be a lost cause, but there's people in it who generally believe in the cause, what the cause actually stands for. We all know it's a means to an end for the Sith to take over the galaxy, but it is nice to see Separatists who actually believe in the cause.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you just want to like quickly go off point there, but I think obviously I think Palpatine sets the Separatists up as a thing where you get sort of good, ideal people on that side, and they become the enemy. And what it means is that when he takes over the Republic and turns into the Empire, half the good people aren't there to oppose him because they're already on the other side. So he separates them.
Yeah.
And obviously, so it means instead of just having Padme, Mon Mothma, and Bail Organa to deal with, he would have maybe had more to deal with. But because he does this, he sort of separates them all. So he already creates a degree of separation in sort of the government, and then obviously it just makes it easier for him. He's a centre power.
Yeah.
So General Cleve sort of surrenders the will to the Republic. He leaves, and then we sort of go to the capital city, where sort of the Jedi go to see the
Gamel Key and his fellow Calorans. Yeah.
And he's a bit like, I don't know, there's this character there who's not named at the time. And he's like...
Yanis Kazmiri.
That's him, yeah. So he becomes the main character later on. But he's like General, sort of disrespects Jan by saying, General, what's her name?
Yeah.
And he's a bit like...
He doesn't see the difference between the Republic or the Separatists.
Yeah.
Both sides of the same coin.
Yeah. And then what you have is that, like, he asks sort of Deeper where they're going to be staying. And she's like, oh, it's a nice time of year. We're going to stay in the fields.
Yeah, we won't bill it at your expense, like the Separatists were doing.
Yeah. And then straight away she starts sort of training. They go into the fields and just training Kanan. And you see them training.
And she asks him what he feels, and it's a weird statement because he says he feels he's at peace during a war, which she retorts like, oh, it's an odd statement considering we're at war. And he says, yeah, he says he knows, but the galaxy's in untold suffering, but he cannot help feeling that he's found his place in it. And she's like, it's understandable, but you have to be ready to adapt because the war won't go on forever, and the Jedi have to adapt. So that was a nice conversation between Master and Padawan.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think they also hint at like Kanan's quite a questionable student, so he asks a lot of questions about things, and like his time at the temple was perhaps he was a little bit mischievous.
Very inquisitive, yeah.
Very inquisitive, yeah. He'd ask questions, you get in a little bit of trouble. Obviously, in the temple, it can get boring, so you try to make your own fun. Where I think here at war, like you're in the thick of it. Like there's no time to act on. And I think he feels at home there because he's no longer bored. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like a clear. There's almost not time to think. It's almost like, look, like this is happening. The battle's happening. Quick react.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk about one cool thing that happens. sort of they're having a conversation here, and sort of Deeper tells Kanan, you must not grow too attached, too fond, too in love with life as it is now. These emotions are valuable and should not be suppressed, but you must learn to rule them, Padawan, lest they rule you. So it's sort of going against sort of the way they preach in the Jedi. I mean, just to say, like, Deeper is on the Jedi High Council.
He is, yeah.
But, like, obviously the council, like, oh, like, you can't have like, you can't love people, you can't have these attachments to people because they're bad. But it's like, you know, if you look at Kenobi, he did have attachments, but he didn't let them rule his head.
Yeah, and then you look at Anakin, who did have attachments and turned out very bad.
Yeah, so it goes to show that, like, with those attachments, like Luke attaching to his father, but then
good attachment, yeah.
But then when it comes to it, he does throw the lightsaber away.
Yeah.
So sort of Kanan sort of listens to that, which obviously as we go on into Rebels, we find out Kanan obviously does have an attachment to his Rebel family, his found family.
Yeah.
You know how that ends in the ultimate selfless act, which again proves that he is perhaps one of the
better Jedi.
One of the finest, up there in the upper echelon of finest Jedi, sort of with Qui-Gon Jinn, with Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, sort of, I would even go as far as to say, obviously, I don't know how his story ends, but I've just been playing the bit in Jedi Fallen Order on Dathomir.
Yeah.
Where sort of Cal Kestis had his lightsaber broken. He goes away, remakes it, comes back, and then he's confronted by the Night Sister Merrin.
Yeah.
And he turns the saber off and talks to her, and he throws it to her, and he goes like, "That doesn't make me a lightsaber doesn't make you a Jedi." So again, very much like, you know what I mean? You can make the selfless act. It's not about being a warrior, and it's not about having a lightsaber, and it's not about ruling the galaxy.
About doing the right thing.
Yeah. So it sort of goes on a bit.
Then we come to the campfire where, well, to be fair, Depper does. Kanan asks her another question, and she says that she thinks the Jedi made a crucial error in taking military titles. And the clones are like, "No, you can't think that because without the Jedi, the war would be lost, and we wouldn't be able to do it." And she's like, "It's not a matter of leadership, but role and rank." And then Kanan's like, "You're questioning the decisions of the Jedi High Council." And she's like, "There's a difference between questioning and having peaceful dissent in the Jedi Order."
Yeah, definitely. And obviously she's spot on here because, like, we even find out that, you know, actually within Star Wars Rebels, I think when Ahsoka's talking to Ezra, he says, like, throughout the war, Yoda got very sort of depressed almost because he knew that, like, we're in a spiral here that we can't get out of. And essentially, as soon as the Jedi take those ranks, and they don't take it because they want to, they take it because they think they need to.
Yeah.
Which is the whole trap that Palpatine set. But once they take those ranks, the Jedi then become so far removed from what they should be.
The Peacekeepers are now generals.
And obviously they're not generals because they want to be generals because, like, they think they need to be because the war's happened out of the blue. But that is the slippery slope. So we see how that sort of Deeper is sort of very mindful.
You could to normal people in the galaxy, you must think like, oh well, they're supposed to be these like peacekeepers, and now they're generals like leading a war. Like it's no wonder that like the galaxy turned against the Jedi.
Yeah, and it's like not leading the war, so because they're generals, then they're obviously serving the Republic on an even higher level now. Where like the Republic says, "Oh, when you go that war, so when the Senate rule it, then they have to go."
Yeah,
even if they disagree. So it's almost like, I don't know, if you take the MCU when they try to bring in those accords in, and Captain America won't sign because he's like, I'm not going to let a UN council pick where I go to see people because people can be corrupt. Where like I know I'm not, and I know that yes, I might make a decision that ends badly, but I know that I made that decision based off the goodness of my heart at the time.
Yeah.
And it's sort of same, like saying the Jedi, obviously, they become generals in this war. They become involved far too much. From being on the front line to Shakti training clones on Camino. They're just involved far too deeply. And again, it's not because they want to be, but it's because there's a sort of
to trap Palpatine's led from.
Yeah, there's a need for it because the galaxy's at war. Do you know what I mean? And as a good person, you'll be like, oh, like I can do something here that can help, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do. So she's sort of aware of it, sort of very Qui-Gon type of thought, where it's like we've gone too far here.
Yeah.
And then we see more of the sort of them clone captain and commandos sort of joking on with Kanan. You see sort of the nice relationship they have.
Yeah. And then the call comes.
Yeah, and the call. Well, I mean, Dipper gives Kanan a holocron first.
Yeah,
which
and that's the holocron we see in Rebels.
That's the holocron we see in Rebels. So it's the one that Ezra steals from Kanan. It's the one that later on Maul and Ezra put together with the Sith one. So we get its sort of origin here, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
And then we have the call. Commander Grey, the time has come. Execute Order 66. Yes, my lord. And again, and then what's sad is that it's done in a tragic way because the next panel is a young Kane with a holocron and it's got like thought bubbles.
Yeah.
And it's got, life is pretty sweet. And it's like, life, everything you know is about to go crashing down around you, mate.
Yeah. And that's how it ends.
And again, it reminded me exactly of like, again, going back to Jedi Fallen Order, the game, that scene when you play different memories from Cal Kestis' past. And there's one way on the Star Destroyer and you're talking to clones and it's all nice. And you get your master and then the call comes in behind the master's back and then you've got to escape with your master. And of course, that ends in tragedy as well, sadly. Star Wars is tragedy.
It is.
Yeah. Little call to the Sky Talk, I say. But yeah, so again, like the tragic thing's going to happen and you sort of know it. And that's where we go into sort of issue number. So that's how the first issue ends, which is pretty like, it ends with that cliffhanger if you know what's about to happen, which is pretty cool and very tragic. So sort of in the next volume, sort of as you pick up right where we left off, there's a little bit of an overlap, and then it's sort of done in a really cool way. The art, it sort of shows you sort of the Jedi feeling what's happening around them. So it sort of shows you Coyote-Mundi.
Yeah.
It shows you Plo Koon's ship. I'm guessing I can't see Plo Koon in it, but it's a Jedi Starfighter getting destroyed. It shows you is it Adi Gala?
Oh, Aayla Secura getting.
That's the one. I get them mixed up.
Getting killed on Felucia.
Yeah. I always get Jedi Council members mixed up.
Yeah.
It's me one finger. It's me one flaw, I would say, in talking about Star Wars. So yeah. And then it sort of shows you that sort of both Deepa and Kanan have felt it.
Yeah, Depa takes Kanan's hand and she shares the vision with him, and obviously he sees what's going on.
Yep, and then she's like, run.
Yeah. And he knows that she's lying. Because she says, run or fight, do not stand. They start beating back the clones.
Yeah. Well,
obviously
she says run, and then he's like still like in a like
freeze,
frozen.
He doesn't know what's going on.
Then she like gets some blasts back and takes out a few. Yeah. And then she's like, look, run or fight, but don't just stand there.
Yeah.
And then like ignites his lightsaber, he finally gets himself out that sort of groove. And of course, like it would happen to anyone. I'll probably be frozen. You wouldn't know what to do because you're like, what? Like the Jedi are dying, and it's these guys who have been fighting with who are my friends. Yeah. And they've just turned like that with no emotion almost. Because it's not easy if they've turned and like they're sorry about it or sad or even happy about it. They just turn like almost. It's one of those things like the clones where like obviously like the Republic picked them because they're the opposite of droids.
Yeah, but they are really,
in this moment where they can turn just like that with a click of your fingers, they are. They're essentially droids, and someone's controlling them. And again, like another tragic flaw. So Kanan's now up. He's fighting with Deepa. Is it? Do you say Depa or Deepa?
I say Depa Bilaba.
Depa Bilba. Right.
I say Bilaba. Bilba, I'm not sure. But yeah, they start beating the clones back, but then it starts becoming apparent that they're not going to be able to get away.
We got to remember there's a whole battalion on that planet, so it's like kill the ones in close proximity. But as we see in the movie with Coyote-Mundi, like on the bridge, blast a few back, but eventually the numbers game will catch up.
Overwhelming force, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's when sort of Depa tells him to sort of go. I'll be right behind you, and he knows she's lying.
He runs
anyway because when you be fair, I think throughout the story, and even throughout the very bits of first seasons of Rebels, Kanan thinks he's a coward for running, but if he had stayed, they'd both be dead.
Yeah.
There's no way they're surviving it. Do you know what I mean? So it's
no way.
She sacrifices herself because if she does that, at least one of them survives, and it's a hope for the Jedi Order. Where if she doesn't and they both stay there, they're probably both going to die.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. She does, once again, she does the selfless thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Sacrifices herself to let a Padawan live.
So again, sort of showing that, do you know what I mean? She is one of the upper echelon of Jedi. So they shoot Depa down.
Kanan runs off,
and they're chasing him.
Yeah, I did like just with the artwork. I did like the panel where the clones are chasing him, and he's obviously buried himself under the ground, and then he comes out. I'd like that artwork. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, no, I think the artwork in this book is phenomenal. But that scene particularly, you sort of see him coming back out, and it's also not wasted because it's obviously referenced on how much he stinks. Which is how he meets someone later. But yeah, you can see sort of the rubble, not the rubble, the mud and the grass and the twigs all over him. And he sort of goes into the city.
Plateau City.
Plateau City, yeah, which is I think it's one of the main cities on Cala.
On Cala, yeah. And then, yeah.
So it sort of shows you him again. It's all done with thought bubbles, but it's raining. He's going in bins looking for food. He is homeless essentially, and it also shows you the clones are scouring the streets looking for him. It's almost reminding me of A New Hope when the Imperials looking for the droids on Tatooine.
Yeah,
and they've got sort of the street patrols. It's very much like that here. Again, like Star Wars' pottery.
Yeah, you can really feel his desperation, because he's I'm starving, but I have no credits. I'm exhausted, but he's too afraid to sleep because he thinks they'll catch him.
Yeah, and it's understandable.
It's a desperate time here.
When you see how many clones are around, I think it's wise that he didn't sleep. To be fair.
Yeah.
So again, he comes across this guy. Sort of finds him. Sort of calls him if it isn't a Jedi baby, is the line. So it was quite funny.
Yeah. That's the same guy who insulted Depa Billaba in the first issue. Janice Casimir. Yeah,
he did. And he didn't just insult her, but he sort of essentially generals on both sides of the war, and he was very much this war's just stupid type of thing. And he sort of makes fun of him a bit, tells him that he smells, looks like you haven't eaten in days, and he chucks him a fruit.
Yeah, the Melu run.
Melu run, yeah. So again, we're going straight back to Rebels there. Yeah. Then he says, I need sleep.
Yeah.
And he's like,
yeah, you can sleep on my ship for a one-time offer.
So he takes him back there, and he's like, you're not gonna, you kind of get on your the bunk bed, smelling how you are. Yeah, you need to get clean. So he does get clean. He sleeps for a full rotation, so a full day.
Yeah.
And then obviously next scene we wake him up, and sort of this guy gives him a sort of changes his look a bit, gives him a bandolier almost over the top. Looks a bit like a small Jawa now.
Yeah, I thought that. Yeah, when I read that, he looks a bit like a Jawa now.
Yeah, and he gives him some more food. He's eating some sort of, looks like a Cornish pasty, but I don't think it is a Cornish pasty.
No, it does look like, just looking at it now, it does look like a Cornish pasty, yeah.
So for our American friends to listen who don't know what that is, if you Google Cornish pasty, you'll see. And then there's this.
I like how Kanan asked him, what do I do now? And he's like, well, you have to do whatever you have to do, to survive, like everyone else. You're not it's basically saying you're not in a posh temple on Coruscant anymore. You have to lie, cheat, and steal to survive.
Yeah,
like everyone else.
Very much Eddie Guerrero vibes coming from this character.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he tells me, you've got to lie, cheat, and steal. You've got to survive. You've got to do what you've got to do. But
because he says the line, he says, didn't they teach you anything useful in that temple of yours? And Ken's like, maybe they didn't teach me in the earlier panels. He's like, they didn't teach me how to survive.
Yeah.
So
I think he's questioning his past quite a bit here. I think he's almost especially as a young guy, he's still a child. You know what I mean? I think he is I haven't been told. So what I'd say that, but looking back, they probably have trained him to survive by the sort of lessons they taught him, but they haven't actually told him how to apply those lessons to this situation, because this was never a situation the Jedi thought they would get them in. It said like there is arrogance in the Jedi Order, especially at this point, amongst some of them, especially Windu, I would say. Yoda definitely goes along with the arrogance. I don't think he's arrogant, but I think he feels a bit trapped and he does go along with it. Kenobi, again, he's not arrogant, but he knows there shouldn't be in a war, and you can tell by the way he goes on, but he's like, sort of have to keep going and hopefully get out of it later.
Yeah, we have to go.
We
have to go along.
But if you keep thinking, "Oh, we'll get out of it when we can," it's like, well, you're never going to get out of it because when you can, like, when's that? It's never. Do you know what I mean? It's always in the future. That.
Yeah.
So you sort of sleep on the ship, and the clones rock up in the hangar. They want to search the ship, and Kanan panics and he steals the ship.
Yeah. He even says he used the line from the Janice Casimir. He's like, "Well, I have to steal," so he steals the ship.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
and starts heading back to Coruscant because he's received the Jedi recall. What's it called? Jedi.
So it's like the return home beacon. The return home beacon. Yeah. So essentially, this book at the minute is taking place at the same time as Revenge of the Sith. So obviously, what I'd say has happened now is Kenobi's probably just killed Grievous. And he's in that ship, and he's just finding Yoda and Bail Organa now, and that is when Kanan is heading for the temple.
Yeah, he's basically going to the one place he really shouldn't, because obviously the clones have led a trap to everyone, like surviving Jedi, to recall to the temple.
Yeah.
And as halfway through hyperspace, he's just about to come out of hyperspace, you get the message from Obi-Wan Kenobi that we've seen so many times in Rebels.
Yeah, and in the movie. So essentially, I think we don't know how long this trip is, but obviously hyperspace can take like a long time. So I would imagine.
Well, he said Allah's Outer Rim, and it's Outer Rim and Coruscant. Oh, yeah.
So by the time while he's traveling, I would say Kenobi and you would have hit the temple, destroyed all the clones in the temple that they could, and Kenobi's changed the home beacon to his message of warning, and then they've got out of town, and then obviously he's about to come out of hyperspace, and then the new message comes through. This is Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he's obviously saying that do not return to the temple, for the time has passed and our future is uncertain. Avoid Coruscant, avoid detection, be secret, but be strong. We will each be challenged, our trust, our faith, our friendships, but we must persevere, and in time I believe a new hope will emerge. May the force be with you always. And he's quite shocked by that. He's like, what, there's no Jedi left, we've got to hide forever. And then he comes out of hyperspace, and then essentially like the Coruscant fleet's waiting.
And they already know because the ship's been reported stolen,
and with a fugitive on board,
and they know it's a Jedi there.
Yep. What do you call those fighters? The
Arc
170s. I thought so. I always get confused. I know they're Arc 170s, but I know the clones have Arc troopers as well. So I always get the word Arc in my brain confused a bit.
I think it stands for Advanced Reconnaissance something craft or something.
Cool.
I think.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. It sounds about right. It'll be similar. It'll be similar, even if it's not that. Yeah.
I know it's reconnaissance. I know it's definitely
so obviously Kanan then has to sort of be involved in a firefight with the sort of these Arc fighters. Luckily, he manages to sort of takes out some of them. To be fair,
yeah, he does. Yeah, and then he
manages to get a sort of a gap where you can make the jump at light speed.
Yeah, and then he's thinking, where on earth should I go? He says, I've set a course, but there's a difference between setting a course and having a destination. And he starts thinking about where he should go. And he says to himself, no, Jedi would think, there'd be places where we don't know where he's thinking about going, but he does say, like, the clones would expect the Jedi to go to all these places, so he goes to the one place that he thinks they won't go, and that's back to Calla.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't tell you where he's thinking of, but I imagine they're like Jedi strong posts. And obviously, like, they're probably like being attacked themselves now and being wiped out. So he goes back to the one place he's running from, and he also takes the ship back, which is sort of a nice gesture as well. That guy's pretty angry with him, but also maybe respects him a bit for like A, stealing the ship when he had to, and B, like he did bring it back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's not very happy with him, but like, I'm pretty like. If he saw him without the ship back, I think he probably would have tried to kill him.
Yeah, no, definitely. Then he tells him to leave, so he goes back onto the street. Then we sort of see a change in Kanan. He's like, he's So I don't know how long he's been in the street for, but his hair's a bit longer now. So it's definitely
it's been a fair bit.
Some months have passed. He's been living on the streets of Cala on his own. And that's when he comes across this guy again, Janice, and he sees.
He's basically following him around, isn't he? Watching what he does.
Yeah.
Looking for an opportunity to save him.
And then what you see is sort of Janice is doing a deal with Tapusk, and the deal goes, looks like it's going to go south, and that's when Kanan jumps in, sort of saves Janice.
Even though he's not very great.
Well, Janice sort of says it wasn't a situation where he needs saving from, but he says he needs crew now, and you've sort of ruined me crew, so you have to come work with me. But then Janice also says that you're going to have to change your look because you look like a monk, Jedi monk. So you stand up like a sore thumb. So this is where you see Kanan. I mean, for starters, he chops off the ceremonial padawan braid, ties his hair back, which is how we see it in Rebels. You see him taking his lightsaber apart like it is in Rebels, getting a blaster, and then we see him smash his Jedi commoning as well.
Yeah, he stores his holocron, his uniform, and his lightsaber. That's all he keeps.
Yeah. On board this.
It looks a lot more like Kanan Jarrus we know now, like a younger version. But
Yeah, it definitely looks slick, man. The outfit's very, very cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It looks almost like an assassin, like then. Yeah.
Jedi, yeah. It doesn't look like a Jedi anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Which I suppose that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
So then they end up going and stealing some droid parts. I think the IG droid parts.
Yeah, it's a IGRM droid.
So I'm not quite sure what they are, but I'm guessing there's some sort of bounty hunting attack droids. Dangerous, I'm guessing, and expensive.
Anything IG, I'm wary about.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what we find is that sort of go to get these things, and then they get sort of it's sort of a setup, isn't it? They get sort of in the middle of stealing the parts to get caught, and they find out that it's that what's he called? Tapusk?
No, it's is it Gamut Key? I thought it was Gamut Key.
Gamut Key's the. Yeah, it is Gamut Key. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's Gamut Key. Yeah, it is. Yeah. But I think Tapusk is
he's ratting them out, yeah. And Gamut Key's the one. He's like the governor. And then you see sort of Janice sort of says, "Don't arrest me, arrest the Jedi instead," and points at Kanan.
Yeah, and he's self-Kanan out, yeah.
So then we have sort of that happens. So he gets arrested.
He gets imprisoned, and Gamut Key obviously tells Captain Styles and Commander Grey, who are going to be there within the hour, to execute him. Yeah,
they're quite like shocked by you see Gamut Key with execution, question mark.
Yeah,
but I was sure you lock them up and put them on trial for the traitors. But it goes to show again, just like
they just want the dead. Yeah, obviously they just want the Jedi.
What these clones are doing, obviously, are just following orders, but there's no real laws or no real humanity behind it. Essentially, just
like you said, droids.
Yeah, good soldiers follow orders. That line again, unquestionable.
From Series 6 of the Clone Wars.
And then we have sort of in there waiting to die, really. And then Janice comes back, tells him to stand back, and then one of them robots comes through the wall.
I'm guessing was that one of the droids that was taken?
So,
I'm guessing that's it.
I assume that.
Yeah.
So I assume that's one of those. He's obviously built one of those IGRM droids up. It's big iron. It smashes, makes good work of that.
That wall,
so quite handy.
And then they escape.
They do, yeah. So they escape, and
he basically, I think Janice basically gives his reason for saving him by basically saying that rat Tapusk, I wasn't going to let him collect my reward. So basically, only saved him to get back at that Tapusk.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think you can tell it's a bit more than that.
Yeah. I think he's the rogue, and he's not going to be like, well, I saved you because it's the right thing to do.
He's almost a bit like Han in that respect, where he's a bit like, I'm just here for the reward. And then later on when he's on Hoth, he's like, I'm just here because I'm here. But but really it's it's here because you want to be here, mate. You could leave at any time.
You're a good person deep down, even though you don't want to admit it. Yeah.
So he's axe the hard man, puts the front on. but
Yeah.
really, he's thingy. And there's a good bit here where sort of Kanan sort of doesn't react to him,
Yeah.
and then he laughs, and he's put like the kids learning like how to be a rogue and how to exist in this world without the Jedi.
There might be some hope for you yet.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next stop is Lawn.
Yeah.
Which I'm not familiar with Lawn, but it's a world where there's grass and trees.
They start a partnership, Janice and Caleb, or obviously Kanan, and they're doing all these jobs on these worlds, and then you find out that the clones are one step behind on every world. That Commander Styles and Grey are still hunting them, and you see like a thing where they're beating down someone to try and get information.
We've got to think like,
and they're constantly tracking.
Got to think that like the Emperor's probably like sending a message going like, kill him now, like what you're doing, or you guys will be killed. And then
I think it'd just be the inhibitor chip basically saying you haven't done your orders.
Yeah.
So probably, and clones are always following orders.
So we go to this planet, and they're doing a deal where they're going to trade spice for a ship. Spice is like the Star Wars drug.
Yeah.
And they're meeting a Mr. John Doe, and we find out that John Doe is actually General Cleve, and Kanan pulls a blaster on him, and then General Cleve's like, "What are you doing? Like, yes, in the war I was a separatist, and you were on the Republic side, but the war isn't even happening anymore. Like, we've both got to survive doing this, as we both are. Like, we were enemies once, but we don't need to be enemies now."
You find out like it was more as well because he says, "Understand, as a separatist, I fought for freedom, but put my trust in a corrupt leadership." So he obviously knows what's going on now.
Yeah.
And he even says, "The Jedi were generals. Do you truly comprehend the cause they served?" He says, "They obviously didn't."
Yep.
And then you find out obviously that the deal is for another ship because obviously they want to have two ships, Janus and Kanan, so they can. If a mission goes south, they can split up and obviously meet at pre-agreed for rendezvous points.
Yeah. While this is happening, the clones have tracked down Janice.
Yeah.
And Kanan decides that he needs to run because the clones are expecting Kanan to return to the ship, and then that's when they'll kill him and then arrest Janice for essentially having the fugitive. So he says if he runs away and never comes back, the clones won't have any evidence on him.
Yeah.
So he goes back and somehow, to be fair, he talks General Cleve into giving him the ship.
Yeah. I don't think he mind tricks him either. To be fair, I think he just. It's obviously that General Cleve is not. Obviously, you see him as a separatist general, the evil person at the beginning. Obviously, he's not as bad as you think.
Well, I think he's one of these guys who joined the separatists. Like,
good intentions.
Yes, the Republic is doing some bad things, and like because they were doing some bad things. You know what I mean? And like I've joined this cause so we can get like freedom and like so like we're not being taxed as heavy as other places, like all that sort of political stuff. Like from a good point of view, but obviously like that actually wasn't what the cause was deep down, and I think he's just that. And that's why in that beginning when he leaves, he's like, yeah, you know what? It's like I don't really believe in this cause. Well, I believe in this cause, but I don't believe in this group's not what I thought it was. And sort of, and he's like, yeah, I'll give you this ship. You need to talk around to his ship he's giving away for free at the minute. And he said, I'll give you this stuff, the spice later. But he eventually talks him around and he goes, you know what, I'll do it for you. Which is quite cool.
We meet Kanan's new ship.
Yeah, which looks I don't know what kind of ship it is, but it's pretty cool, pretty slick.
Yeah. I'd love to have seen it in Rebels, but obviously they took too much explaining to do.
Yeah. And then we get a sort of Kanan senses something in all danger. And it's obviously the clones. So he goes for his lightsaber because it's like an old feeling. But obviously his lightsaber's not there because obviously he's no longer carrying that. And that's when the clones knock him out. And it's like he should have went for his blaster really, but like I said, because it was an old memory, his reflex actions, he's gone for his lightsaber. We see the clones also arrest General Cleve as well. Like he's looked quite in distress, so we know he's not been ratted out really. I think the clones have just caught up to them. Obviously, the clones are very good at the job, so like have caught up to him. So we want to sort of issue 5 now of the run. Sort of the clones have got him and they take him on board the ship.
And so they've captured him and basically they're in the ship and the clone says to one, I don't know if it's Styles or Grey, I can't tell. He says, you brought his corpse. He says, what? He's not dead. And he says, he's not dead. They haven't killed him yet because they want to kill him in front of each other. But then the other clone says, you think I get some kind of thrill from this? It's a matter of duty, period. So he doesn't get any enjoyment from it. He just sees it as doing his duty.
Yeah, and the other one sort of hints at maybe he does enjoy it a bit.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a sadistic
side. A little bit, yeah. And that's when Kanan sort of said, I'm going to guilt trip them here. He starts telling them, what do you mean, traitor? He says, like, we fought in the wars together. So, like, it's sort of true because, like, whatever the Jedi did, the clones did. Do you know what I mean? So, like, and like, and even if the Jedi Council, for example, had turned on the Emperor, like, or the Chancellor, doesn't mean all the Jedi did. So you can't treat the whole group for the crimes of some of them, even though no crimes were committed. But even if they had been perceived that way, the ones who are fighting the wars, where it's like, oh, like he didn't do anything and he didn't do anything. So you at least arrest them and try them with evidence of them being part of it. But obviously, Palpatine doesn't want that. He's like, just kill them. And obviously, he's sort of Kanan brings up like, look, you not realize how silly this is. Like, there's definitely something going wrong because we're sort of disobeying the fundamentals of humanity here and like the fundamentals of being free. Like, that should happen. Do you know what I mean?
He really does guilt trip him though, because he says, "Oh, Styles Grey, try to remember you worship Master Balaba. Like he says, do you really, truly believe in your hearts you can never be a traitor?" And then obviously it doesn't work straight away, and then Kanan obviously uses the Force one last time to try and get through to them. He
does, yeah. And then he ends up sort of throwing himself out in an airlock into space, where both Janice's ship and the Escape are there. Janice,
I think Cleve's piloting the Escape.
Cleve's piloting the Escape. Them two have sort of teamed up, and sort of to save. Sort of Kanan gets dragged into the Janice's ship, which is named after him because he's quite egotistical.
That is a bit egotistical.
And then you find that the clones are like target both ships and open fire. And then as they're about to do it, one of the clones, I can't remember which one it is now.
Grey. It's Grey who gets
Commander Grey sort of Kanan's words have resonated with him and he realises a bit that like, hang on a sec, these guys fought alongside us for so many years, had our backs for so many years, and we just turned on them for no reason because we didn't see any traitorous acts from them. And that's when he blows up the control panel that controls the shields.
Yeah.
So the shields drop on the ship. And then, unlucky for the rest of the clones on board, but the other the Escape and Janice's ship fire on them and blow it up.
Yeah.
And then they escape.
And then they meet back on Kala.
Yeah, where sort of Kanan says, I'm going to go in separate ways now. Sorry, guys, but I think like it's gone too far. Like, type of basically I'm being tracked and followed, and it's going to happen all the time. So he comes across as being a bit of a nasty about it, but I think deep down
he beats up Janice.
But I think he's actually doing it because he's like, you two come out together and make money, and like I'll go elsewhere. And he goes, I'm taking the Escape. So he takes the Escape as his ship. He just only takes his holocron and his lightsaber. He leaves his robes behind.
Yeah.
And that's when he decides he's going to be called Kanan Jarrus.
Yeah.
And he lands on a planet called Moraga. I don't know what the planet is like or what's on it, but that's where he goes. Yeah, and then it cuts straight back to the sort of Rebels crew, and it's like Kanan's been out of it for a bit after they mentioned the planet name from the beginning of the book.
Yeah. And Hera's asking him, have you ever been to Kala? And it's in a way, he's like, well, no, Kanan Jarrus has never been to Kala.
Yeah, because he hasn't, because it was Caleb Dume at the time.
Yeah.
So now going to issue 6, the final issue starts. Then it's obviously we're back in like sort of the present time setting with the Ghost crew, with Adult Kanan, Sabine, Ezra, Chopper, Hera, and his name's totally gone out of my mind. Zeb, that's the one.
Zeb.
So they're there for the milk run. As soon as they land, sort of Kanan can see ghosts almost of like his younger self sitting with Depper and the clone commandos. And when they get there, the crates are empty. But again, Kanan's mind's elsewhere. You can see Depper sort of pushing ghost clones away in his mind. And before you know it, they get rumbled.
The supplies are missing. The supplies they've gone to pick up are missing. They've been stolen.
Yep. And and then the government turn up when it's Gamut Key again.
Yeah. And he's now an imperial government.
Yeah, so obviously, probably what is that like? Obviously, the world was, I think it was Republic, then it was Separatist. The Republic took it back, and then straight away the Republic turned it the Empire.
Yeah. I think there's a point in the comic later on where he says something like that.
So, like, he's saying he's got full Imperial authority because he's technically an Imperial governor. That doesn't mean he's Imperial, if that makes sense. He might be.
Yeah.
He might be a nasty guy, but like he might not be. But essentially, any planet that's under Imperial rule, like you're under their authority, really.
Yeah.
And Herod gets him out of it, sort of seeing all these empty crates. Nothing to do with us. So when we arrived, they search our ship. Obviously, nothing's on the ship. So they let them off.
Yeah. And Kanan thinks he's going to recognise him.
Doesn't recognise him, yeah.
Obviously, because obviously 15 years have been passed and he's grown up a lot.
Then what you find is they're going to go looking for the crates because whether they like it or not, they need to get that milk for Tarkin Town. Those refugees need it. I mean, they're starving, they're homeless. Yeah.
And Kanan's trying to talk them out because they're saying we'll have to track down the shipment on Kanan, and he's like, no, like obviously they don't know why, but obviously he's just trying to talk them out of going.
Yeah.
And then they end up back at Plateau.
That's what he does. He splits them up. I've noticed because he realizes that he can get the milk, but he doesn't want them being around him when he does it because I think he doesn't want his past coming up. So he sort of splits the group off, where it's just him and Chopper go off together, and the rest go off in groups as well.
Yeah.
And sort of he checks out all his old horns because he sort of knows the planet a little bit.
Just keep seeing Ghost.
Ghost eye, and then I think he ends up.
He thinks the person who's stolen the crate is Janus. He thinks that, and then obviously he goes to where Janus hangs out, and then you find out that it's the Puss using. Well, it's the Puss, yeah. And he says, "Have we met?" And Kanan's like, then he tries to say, "I'd met." He said he's friends with Janus Casimir, and he once mentioned him online.
Yeah.
And then obviously Kanan gets surrounded by Topusky's goons.
And he takes them all out, using some ninja moves, martial arts, which is quite cool.
Yeah. But he's not focused, is he?
No, he's not focused at all. So he ends up, Topus gets up and stabs him in the left shoulder, it looks like.
Yeah, because he's unbalanced. Because obviously Kala unbalances him, so he's not as focused as he is. So he ends up being stabbed. And then Gamut Key comes.
He does, yeah.
And basically says that he is.
He says that he does recognise him, and sort of Kanan plays it down, and sort of Gamut sort of agrees to play it down, but it's sort of like, I know. And he says sort of like, while we're an Imperial planet, like the Imperials aren't good, but obviously we've got to play along. But like he knows that the Imperials aren't good.
Yeah, he says, my world has seen many masters, the Republic, the Separatists, the Republic again, and then if briefly, and then the Empire. He says, but even an old politician such as myself can develop an aching back from constantly kneeling in front of people.
Yeah, so it's a very good line, and obviously Kane right here sort of makes, not only does he get the milk, but he's also like made an asset for an ally for the rebellion, like a governor who's, do you know what I mean, within the Imperial Senate, which is cool.
Yeah.
So he puts the call in, and they're 3 minutes away. And then Kane, what do you think happens here? Does he faint from being stabbed?
I'm guessing so, yeah. I think he does, because obviously he's been stabbed in the shoulder. He's obviously had a lot of adrenaline. Then he's bleeding and that, and I'm guessing the adrenaline wears off in the air, and then he passes out. And obviously, as he passes out, there's a great panel where he passes out, and obviously he sees the ghost behind him himself, Stephen Balaba, Janice, and
it's almost like the ghost of his pastor haunting him. It's almost like a scene from a Christmas Carol.
The last bubble in that arc really just sums up. He says,
really, really good. And that's the end of Volume 1, The Last Padawan. I think we should just move straight into Volume 2, First Blood. So just to start off, so it's pretty much the same crew. Greg Weisman's writing. The artists are Pepe Larraz, but there's another artist on here now, Andre Bricado, and David Curiel still are the colorist. And it's still the same Lucasfilm and story executives, Ryan Roberts, Pablo Hidalgo, and Gideon Chi, who are looking after the book in regards to Kanan. And I'm just going to read the game. We get another crawl, which I'll just read, and then I'll let you take over. First Blood. It is an era of betrayal. The Republic has fallen after the elimination of the Jedi Knights by Chancellor Palpatine's Order 66. Now, as Emperor, Palpatine firmly commands the galaxy by his own rules. Rebels have banded together to fight back. Among them is former Jedi Padawan Caleb Doom, who now calls himself Kanan Jarrus. He and his rebel companions are back on planet Kala, where Kanan lost his master years ago. Kanan's past haunts him as he searches for his ex-partner, Janice Kashmir, who he suspects smuggled supplies the rebels need. In his search, he's wounded by Tupusk before falling unconscious, while the ghost of his Padawan past zero in on him. Yeah, so it's pretty much sums up that first volume pretty perfectly, especially that last line. So I'll let you take the lead on this one, Ian.
So the first issue in First Blood is issue 7, and it opens up on the planet Kala in the present day with the Rebels crew. Kanan is in a Bacta tank, and they're asking him how Zeb's how does Kanan Jarrus get stabbed in the back? And obviously he doesn't know about his past, and obviously with him being unbalanced. And then he's obviously in the Bacta tank, and then that's straight away we flip back into the days of the Clone Wars, where Kanan is at the Jedi Temple, one day away from initiate trials, and him and a couple of other Padawans are doing lightsaber practice. And you get a great callback here with Yoda, where he tells Caleb Doom to maintain his form, and he says, "I'll try him after Yoda," and then Yoda says, "Do or do not. There is no try."
Love your little callback in Empire Strikes Back, yeah.
And then obviously they are doing the lightsaber training, and Kanan is injured. He takes a blow to the head, and Yoda tells him to go to the infirmary, and obviously that cuts short his lightsaber practice. And then he arrives at the infirmary, and the droid rumbles him, basically. I like the droid here. He basically says, "There's nothing wrong with you. Enough whining. Get up and grow up and get out." Which is nice. It's just very nice for the Jedi. The droid's a bit harsh. But this is where he comes across Depa Billaba, his master, because obviously this is set before the last arc. It's set before we go to Kala. This is telling the story of how he becomes...
So obviously, for those who don't know, the initiate trials is essentially where the Jedi perform sort of a rite of passage ceremony. The younglings do that. Or if you read Duke of Jedi Lost, they're called initiates, I believe. The younglings are the initiates to perform sort of a ceremony. It's like lightsaber combat, I believe. Is the only element we're aware of at the moment in storytelling. Maybe there's others, we don't know. And essentially the Jedi Masters watch this, and the Jedi Masters choose initiates or younglings to be their Padawan. So that's what he's training for at the minute. And that's how he's got her, training for the initiate ceremony.
Yeah. So then, he comes across Depa, and she's in the Bacta tank. And Kanan asks the droid, he says, "Who is that?" And the droid's like, "None of your business now." He kicks him out of the infirmary, and just as Kanan's leaving, Master Balaba wakes up. And obviously then we get panels with Mace Windu, Yoda, and Obi-Wan. They're asking the medical droid, has she made a full recovery? He says physically she can, but she can't speak for a mental state, which we'll get into later, because obviously there's reasons why a mental state might not be great. But she spent this. You find out she spent 6 months in a coma, and basically she has to go through trials to make sure she's ready to be back on the front line in the Clone Wars. So there's a nice panel where it's side by side with basically Kanan and Depper, like one's at top, one's at bottom. Kanan's doing his initiate trials, and Depper's actually just going through trials with Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Yoda to see if she's healed fully. And then we go to the Jedi Council, and she's invited back onto the Jedi Council, even though she thinks she's failed. But Obi-Wan has a nice line where he says, "A lack of failure has never been a prerequisite to service." It says, "Oh, otherwise none of us would be here." And then they go back to talking about the younglings, who 3 of them have passed their Jedi Initiate trials. One of them is a young Caleb Doom. And we go to a nice shot of where they're in the library, and Jocasta Nu, the Jedi librarian, you see in Attack of the Clones and all that type of stuff, is telling them how they picked Jedi Padawans, and Caleb's like, "Why?" And they're like, "Excuse me," and he's like, "Why is that the preferred method?" He says, "Was it based on trial of error? Did the Force reveal it to them?" And you can see in the background there's Mace Windu, there's a few Jedi, and basically Kanan's inquisitive nature makes Depa Billaba laugh, which is quite a nice touch.
Yeah, you also see Mace's disdain.
Yeah. He doesn't
So
look very
he's a
happy,
bit too serious, isn't he?
Yeah, he is a bit intense, Mace Windu. And then we go, obviously we see Depper teaching the 3 Jedi who passed the initiate trials, and then we see them go, they're walking through the temple together and they're gossiping, and this is where you find out that apparently there's a rumour going around that Depa Billaba has damaged goods, because in her last mission, her battalion suffered 90% casualties, and you find out it was up against General Grievous.
Right.
So then they're saying best case, her best case scenario is that General Grievous outgeneraled her, or the worst case is they think she's bad luck. Yeah. And Kanan, being Kanan, goes straight to Depper and asks her, basically, and she's like, she basically says, "So I figured out I should ask you," and she says, "Not a politic choice, but a wise one, perhaps." And then she's about to tell him what happens, and then the Jedi Temple falls under attack by a cage warrior, who we see in the Clone Wars in the Bounty Hunter episode with Asajj Ventress and Boba Fett and Bossk and all that. They're the cage warriors. And then the issue 7 ends with an explosion in the Jedi Temple, and then it says to be continued, which we go to chapter 8. Have you got anything to add with that?
Yeah, so we go to chapter 8, which then takes us back to the modern, well, not modern day, but essentially the Rebels time frame, the sort of present day as Rebels.
Yeah. And he's basically, Zeb's asking how long does he have to stay in, Sabine's asking how long does he have to stay in the attack, and this is where you find out the Rebels are surrounded by the Empire. The Empire know they're in this building, and then we flash back again to the Clone Wars, to where the Temple is under attack. And Depper obviously saves Kanan from an explosion, and he's like, "Master, the Temple is under attack." And then you see this cage warrior moving around in the air ducts, and there's a nice callback to, and then we go to another flashback. It's very flashbacky, and you find out that the cage warrior's motive against the Jedi says the Jedi have sided against liberty and justice, and this cannot go unpunished. And this is with General Cleave as well. General Cleave is in this flashback.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And you find out they plan to blow up the main spire of the Jedi Temple, which would be a very symbolic blow if they managed to do it. And then, yeah, he's basically just going through the temple. You see Master Sindralig, which is a good. Oh, just going back to that, there's a nice tie into one of the Clone Wars episodes, because he says he got the plans for the Jedi Temple off a bounty hunter named
Cad Bane.
Which is a good, because you obviously see in Series 2, you see Cad Bane break
to steal a
Jedi
holocron,
Temple.
doesn't he? I believe that.
Yeah, to steal. Yeah, the holocron that has all the Jedi younglings on it for Darth Sidious, which is a nice little tie-in. I like all these stuff that tie in. It really is good, like because it makes you feel. Obviously, doesn't make you feel worse reading it all, but it's like, oh, that's from that. It does.
So one of the things I've said is that like these comics are awesome and the stories are really good anyway. But then the fact that they do subtly tie in so well to other things, it's an extra reward for those who have like A, spent their money on all the different products, and then B, spent their time investing the time into it as well. And it all sort of pays off, I think, when you get these sort of connections. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's great because obviously you can pick this up and never have watched anything, and you still get what's going on. It's not like, well, there's not things in there where you'd be like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, definitely. But then for those who have invested in everything, it's like there's all these subtle little connections that like pay off really well.
Yeah. And then you see Jedi Master Sindralig, which is a nice. We haven't seen much of Sindralig. He's the Jedi Temple Battle Master. He's supposed to be like formidable as a duelist. And then he tells, obviously, the Jedi Masters are running around at the bottom because the Cage Warriors obviously blowing up the bottom half of the Jedi Temple. So they're
do we know his fate? Master Dralik.
Oh, Sindralig. I think Anakin kills him.
Oh shit!
In Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, I think he does.
Not very formidable, but
no. Well,
the greatest Jedi of all time.
Yeah. You're gonna get killed by a Jedi. Might as well be Darth Vader.
No, definitely.
And then Kanan. I keep saying Kanan, but it's Caleb Doom, but it is Kanan.
I was going to say, if those listening it might get confused, so I always try to refer to him as Kanan, but yeah, so Kanan's Jedi name was Caleb Doom, and he changed it when he went into hiding. Like some people just changed the first name, like Obi-Wan just changed his name to Ben Kenobi, and that was enough, but this guy changed his full name. Probably a clever option.
Yeah. And then obviously goes to Kanan, who figures out that the attacker is on the roof of the Jedi Temple, and he goes up to the roof to confront the attacker. And the attacker, like, obviously he's blown up the Jedi Temple, but he does come across that he has a bit of honour here, because he says, look, kid, you're too young and probably too indoctrinated to understand, but you're on the wrong side here. The Jedi are bad guys fighting against freedom and self-determination. And he says, I'd rather not this job include killing Padawans, so for both our sakes, run. And, which is obviously proves that this, obviously being a terrorist, but he doesn't want to kill kids unless he absolutely wants to. Because he just thinks they're brainwashed basically by the Jedi. And then Kanan runs towards him. The Cage Warrior takes him down, and he's about to kill Kanan when Death of Balaba comes and defends Kanan, and they end up having a confrontation. And there's a really cool moment where the Cage Warrior goes to throw an explosive at Death of Balaba, but she uses the Force to keep the liquids inside from crossing to make it blow up. I thought that was a really cool moment.
You would think she would just use the Force to like push it back at him or like push it off the side of the building, but like it's cool how like she actually like had the brains to like be like, no, I'm just going to stop it from blowing up by keeping the chemicals mixing.
And the Cage Warrior is like, that's not possible, but it obviously is because she's doing it. And then she flings the explosive up into the air, and she offers the Cage Warrior mercy because she stops him from getting to the bomb to blow up the central spire of the Jedi Temple, and she offers mercy. And the more and more I read about Death of Balaba, the more and more I like her. I think she's a very good Jedi.
Yeah, I think as we said before, reading the first one, I mean, she comes across as definitely the upper echelon of Jedi, sort of. I would say as far as like the Qui-Gon Jinns, the Obi-Wan Kenobis, or the Kanan Jarrus is like almost the Luke Skywalker sort of after Return of the Jedi. I mean, the one who throws his lightsaber away. So, like, definitely sort of that sort of like upper echelon of Jedi. He wasn't tied in too much to like the Senate, in like micromanaging and controlling governments.
It's the same as Dooku, because in Dooku Jedi Lost, he basically doesn't. But he had the same idea. It's no wonder like Qui-Gon had the same idea and all that type of thing.
Oh yeah, but I think like the difference is obviously Dooku sort of left the Order, and then I don't know how he became evil, but obviously he was twisted to the dark side. Where I think if you almost look at Ahsoka, she became one of the lost Jedi.
She didn't become a member of that.
The lost 20, isn't it? I believe
it's Jedi Masters. That's the lost. Yeah.
Oh, so
she leaves the order.
Obviously, she leaves the order and doesn't become evil. Almost sticks to our Jedi roots. Almost.
Still says she's not a Jedi.
To be fair, I would say she's more Jedi because she's more like the classic, like how the Jedi should be, because she's not involved in the war. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost. Yeah. So like in title, she's not a Jedi, but I think, but actually by doing that, she's actually becomes more of a Jedi than she's ever been. If that makes sense. And
then we go back to one of the thoughts I had about it. She offers the Cage Warrior mercy, and this is where we find out his name. His name is Rackham Seer of Quasite, and he's a captain in the Confederacy of Independent Systems. And he uses the line, "I do not seek the mercy of tyrants." So he goes on the attack. He tries to kill Depper and Kanan, and obviously he tries to jump off the roof of the Jedi Temple. So obviously he'd rather kill himself than be captured, or because obviously he doesn't seek the mercy of tyrants. And then he's been force held in midair, and he throws explosives at them. So obviously they have to let him go, and he ends up dying. And then this is where Depper says, "It seems I'm in desperate need of a Padawan in order to continue my journey." And Kanan gets excited. He thinks I'll be on the master, and then she says, "Unfortunately, Kayla Dunn, you are too young for such a role." And then he thinks, obviously, he's had the rug pulled out from under him. But then he says, "But times is what they, but the times being, they're what the Republic need." So then, obviously, it leaves it on a bit of a cliffhanger because you don't know if he's going to become his apprentice. And then Mace Windu and Obi-Wan are on the roof, and they say, "Is it over?" And then we do find out, he slips on later, and we do find out that he becomes Depper's Padawan, and he's talking to his friends, who he thinks are his friends, and he basically expects them to be happy for him. And one of them says, "You're not safe with her," obviously, and the other one says, "You're not ready." And then there's a little thought bubble where Kanan's like, "I didn't expect my friends, one, to show fear and envy," because he's obviously talking to Master Balaba. So it's proved that the Jedi are infallible, because obviously the Jedi are trying to bring him down. Obviously, he's chosen to be a Padawan, and then they're like, "Oh, well," one saying you're not safe with her, fear, and one saying, "Oh, well, you're not ready for it, envy." Yeah.
I mean, you got to remember that these are kids, so like I think it's in Duke of Jedi Lost where like some of the kids are dicks.
There's one who's alright. I don't remember his name now.
Because obviously Duke and Sifo Dyas are best mates in that book. Like they're like, and then there's the other one who's like a bit of a.
I can't remember his name.
He likes bullying him a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
I can't remember his name for now.
But so obviously these two kids, obviously a bit like. I mean, one says you're not safe with her, so that could be him maybe looking out for him, because obviously like Depp does have a reputation
getting destroyed.
So, and then the other. Yeah, and then the other one is like, "You're not ready to be a Padawan." So that one is a little bit nasty, that second one. But I think it goes to show that like you're not safe with her, but actually she saves his life.
Yeah.
So he was actually the most safe he could be with her.
There, we see him on a Venator Star Destroyer, and they're basically going for their first mission, which is going to the planet Cardoa, and this is where they meet. This is obviously where they meet Commander Stars and Grey. Obviously, in happier times before the first arc showed us Order 66. And that is issue 8.
Yeah.
And then we move on to issue 9. Yeah.
And I just want to quickly talk about the end panel. So it's their names are Commander Grey and Captain Silas.
Yeah.
And I know we'll be great friends. And it's like, you do become great friends, but again, Star Wars is tragedy.
It doesn't.
It's not going to
end.
Then we
move on to First Blood Part 3. And then it goes back to, obviously, every issue in this arc, it goes back to the Rebels in the present day at the start. And the Imperials still warning them to come out. And basically, they say, we can't move him at the moment. He's still in the back of the tank. And the droid says, basically, if you move him, he might die. So obviously, they're stuck there. And then it flashes back again to the Clone Wars. And then we see them on Cardoa. They're practicing. They're training, and
it's one of the things I like about both books is that like you see when Depa can, they take the time out of
Yeah.
the war to
Still-
train, which is obviously, yes, they've got to fight the war, but like he is her
like you said,
padawan
the
and she
first
has to
issue of the
train
war
him,
won't
and she
go on
takes that
forever.
seriously.
Well, it won't, but obviously they don't think that
Yeah.
way. And then it goes to another campfire,
Yeah.
and this is where we meet the leaders of Depper's clone battalion, Commander Grey, Captain Styles, Sergeant Sut, and Corporal Big Mouth, which is a nice name. That's his actual name, Corporal Big Mouth, yeah.
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 Well, these clones have given
And
themselves
then,
nicknames.
we get into a bit of the thing, the last battalion she had, where she says, Styles says, the four of us are the only troopers remaining from your last command. And he says, you can't blame yourself for that, General. And she says, I can and I do, but move on. So she still blames herself for what happened to the last battalion she had. And then we meet a couple more of the clones, and then we find out that Kanan really doesn't like to be called Kid. He says that a lot. They call him Kid, he doesn't like it.
Yeah, well, again, he didn't like it when
Yeah, he says it a lot.
Janice called him Kid either.
Don't call me Kid. And then we find their mission on Cardoa is to see if there is a separatist presence on the planet. And they don't realise while they're at this campfire they're being watched by a separatist probe droid. And then we go to the separatist side and we find that it's General Cleve. And then their mission is the exact same. It's to find out there's a Republic presence on Cardoa. And there's another Page Warrior here. And he sees General Cleve thinks they should just leave Cardoa. There's no reason to seek engagement. We have no armies and nothing at stake. But obviously, the Cage Warrior is obsessed. He said because he's apparently due on Magneto, but he's reluctant to leave even a damaged Jedi alive. And you find out his name's Colonel Sear. And basically, General Cleve departs for where was he going? Can't remember. General Cleve's going to Kala, so that's where we find out he's going to Kala. So it's not long until the beginning of the comic. And Colonel Sear is supposed to be due on Magneto, but he can't let it go. And we switch through to the morning, and this is where we meet a young clone trooper named CT-1157, who doesn't have a name at the moment. He's obviously very young. You see him take his helmet off. He's a very young clone. And him and Kanan become friends. And they're on maneuvers on Cardoa, and they basically fall under attack by the separatists, and Kanan gets a bit ahead of himself and starts going off and bringing droids down, and he ends up getting himself shot by being a bit too OTT. And then basically Depper goes off to try and find that Colonel Sear. She obviously realises Kanan's been shot. And this is where Kanan's about to be killed by the droids, and then that young clone trooper we were talking to, 1157, puts himself on the line to kill the droids that are about to kill Kanan. And then it flips. It's very fast moving. Then it flips to another panel where Depper is attacking the Separatist ship, and this is where the Separatists leave the planet. They're retreating, and this is where the young clone earns the name Stance for helping Kanan. That was a good moment.
Yeah, again, it goes sort of like the clones and the Jedi. Like they do have a strong bond, and that's what makes what happens brothers in arms and like joining there for each other, and that's why it's even more tragic.
I was
what
in the
happens.
British Army for 7 years, and yeah, it is true. You are closer to people you serve with than other people. It's just how it is. I can fully get behind it.
Yeah, and like do you know what I mean? Like, so, and just to think, like, imagine if you got a text to like kill your colleague, and then you actually did it with no thought because that, and then you realize what's happened after. Like, it is like the ultimate tragedy, really. Like,
and then we move on, and then we find out the next assignment for the battalion is on Magneto, and then there's a panel at the end where you see Colonel Sear, who's obviously failed to kill the Jedi on Cardoa. He says apologies to the Jedi survived, and then we find out he's talking to General Grievous, And he says, I'm not neither pleased nor surprised, Colonel. Thirdly, I have to deal with it myself, as you wish, General Grievous. That's how issue 9 is.
Yeah, and it's a bit like General Grievous, for all evil he is, I don't think he kills that guy.
Oh,
but,
yeah,
like,
he's dead, yeah.
if that had been Vader,
so then
he would have killed him.
To issue number 10, part 4 of First Blood. And then it obviously flips back to the Rebels era. And this is where the Imperials are finally trying to break into the med center to kill the Rebels. And the Rebels are giving up a fight, but they think it's there's too many stormtroopers, so they no room to move. And Kanan's still in the back of the tank, so they're in a tough spot at the moment. And then he's in the back of the tank in the present day, and then it flips to the Clone Wars again, where Kanan is in the back of the tank, obviously after being shot on Cardower.
Yeah. So I mean, again, like this whole comic book series is very much like pottery, which is sort of how George describes Star Wars. So I know George isn't involved in Star Wars anymore, but like it's crazy and also like good to see like how much the storytelling does still stay in that George way.
Agree, yeah. And then we move on, and we are on the war-torn planet of Mygeeto, which is obviously where Ki-Adi-Mundi meets his end in Revenge of the Sith. It's the third battle of Mygeeto, and they have orders there to clear the southern mesas of all battle droids. And then they move out, and obviously they're in Mygeeto is supposed to be one of the worst battles of the Clone Wars, and they just keep fighting. They're outnumbered on Mygeeto, but they just keep going. And basically, they're coming to the end. They've just finished the battle, but then they've been cut off, and they're on top of a spire where thousands and thousands of battle droids are climbing up this spire, and there's only Styles, Grey, Stan, Depper, and Kanan, and they are trying to keep these battle droids from climbing the spire. They obviously I think there's only Grey actually. I don't think Styles is there, and they're both at 4 quadrants, and they're just trying to beat these battle droids back, but they can't because there's too many, and they're basically waiting for a evacuation. And the evacuation is 2 minutes out, and they don't think they'll have 2 minutes. And this is where we meet Fen Rao from Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah, so sort of Skull Squadron have arrived to help General Bilboa, and straight away the ships are the Mandalorian fighters.
Yeah, and,
I think that's what they're called. Yeah,
but obviously you get that episode in, I think it's Rebel Season 2, where Kanan's like, because they obviously the protectors of Concord Dawn, they say, "Oh, this is Fen Rao," and Kanan says, "Oh, I didn't meet Fen Rao once, but he saved me at the Battle of Mygeeto." So once again, it's a nice tie-in to Rebels.
Yeah, so basically, this Skull Squadron, I believe, they're not part of Mandalore.
Fen Rao basically comes. He says, "I think I can buy you those 2 minutes," and she says, "The assistance is much appreciated, Skull Leader." And he says, "Name is Fen Rao, General and Skull Squadron is happy to demonstrate that not all Mandalorians have forgotten their honour and obligations." So maybe there's a split between Mandalorians, like the Death Watch side, and maybe ones who are loyal to the Republic.
Well, I think there's a reason. Obviously, if he's part of Concord Dawn, I think like it could be that like that could be like a split group.
Yeah,
like where as we are going to be part of the Death Watch.
Rebels versus being confronted. She says, "Oh, I'm from House Vizsla." And the protectors are like, "Oh, you're a traitor then." So I'm guessing it's some sort of Mandalorian war because they're very aggressive people.
Yeah.
But basically, Skull Squadron and Fen Rao buy them the time to escape. Even there's a nice tie-in as well because Kanan says never did get to meet Fen Rao, but never got to thank him in person. Obviously, we'll meet him in the future when we get into Rebels. Yeah, and then they get back to base camp, which is basically abandoned because most of the battalion's still in the field. So it feels like, but then just as they think they're safe, their base camp, their transport gets blown up, and battle droids just appear out of nowhere. And Stance, Kanan's friend, is killed, which is not great. He is killed by, I think it's Colonel Sear. I think it's the same Cage Warrior. He's stabbed in the back with a sword. It looks like an energy sword type thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that
It
is,
looks
but
like it looks like the dark saber.
some type of
Jedi,
energy
but it's
sword.
not the same. Obviously, it's not black. No,
Yeah, and the blade doesn't look
no,
like
it just looks like maybe it's like a
as cool, does it?
vibro sword or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe it's a vibro sword turned on, so it's like you're actually seeing the vibrations.
And then obviously
maybe that's why it's
Stanton's
that colour.
killed and Kanan's heartbroken about it, to be honest. And then the issue ends because Depa Billaba thinks she's about to fight the Cage Warrior, and this is where she is confronted by General Grievous. Yeah.
So he's obviously from her past. Of she's the reason why her last battle went so wrong, and why she was in a coma.
He looks awesome in this, by the way, as well. Like the artwork, like I said, the artwork's stunning. All of it. Grievous does look. He looks massive as well, like he's towering over Depa Billaba. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks very formidable.
10. And this is where we move on to issue 11. Second to last, yeah.
Second last issue.
Really, like, honestly, I can't recommend these comics higher. They're really good. So then we move back to. You were going to say something?
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, for anybody who's like, obviously, like Disney Plus is pretty much available in every market. Pretty much, I think there's a few markets that's not available in like France and stuff, but like it's pretty much available everywhere. So like, if you're enjoying Rebels and if you're enjoying Clone Wars, I definitely recommend picking up these Kanan comic books because it blends like the two stories together really, really well in such a subtle way. And I think you'll really enjoy the payoff. So anybody who's enjoying Rebels, anybody who's enjoying Clone Wars on Disney Plus now, go and buy these comics. And obviously, like, because of what's happening in the world where you've got to sort of self-isolate and stay indoors now, like, buy them on Amazon. You've got time to read them. Go and get them. Honestly, you'll love it.
Back into issue 11 opens again with the Rebels in the current day. The Rebels have been captured. Kanan's still in the Bacta tank, and the stormtroopers like, should we bring them in for interrogation, or should we perform summary execution here on Kala? And then it switches back to the Clone Wars again, and it's basically Kanan versus the Cage Warrior and Depa versus Grievous. And then Kanan starts going down the dark path here. He's just killed his friend, and he says, "It's the first time in my life," he says, "monster" to the Cage Warrior. He says, "I want to kill." And the Cage Warrior tries to attack him. And Grievous is still trying to taunt Depa by saying, "Oh, I'm going to kill you and your Jedi whelp today." And basically, Depa and Grievous are in a battle. And they're still fighting. Then Depa is able to chop two of Grievous's hands off, which obviously the cyborg doesn't like. But fortunately for him, he's still got two more.
Yep.
And Styles and Grey, Depa is injured by Grievous. He manages to get a shot on her back, so she's injured. And Styles and Grey are trying to do everything they can to get to Depa to save her. And then we go back to Kanan with the Cage Warrior. And this is basically Kanan going down the dark path. He says there's power in this anger, in this darkness, and the power that anger, that darkness is seductive, immersive, and all-encompassing, like a pool of black water rising over my head. He says it'd be so easy to sink into the pool and never emerge again. But then Kanan says even a padawan can see that is not the way. Not the way to honorably grieve my friend, not the path of a true Jedi, not even the means to anything to save a Pyrrhic victory. So even Kanan says this is not the way. It's not that you shouldn't use this anger to kill. The Cage Warrior obviously goes down the Jedi path, and he's still able to subdue the Cage Warrior. And he says, like his master did in the last couple of issues, he says, "I offer you mercy, Cage Warrior." And the Cage Warrior obviously says the same thing as the last one did. He says, "My name for the record is Coben, Seer of Quasi. I'm a colonel in the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and I do not seek the mercy of tyrants." And he basically sets himself on fire and runs at Kanan, and Kanan takes him down. Which is one hell of a way to go out.
Definitely. I mean, again, it goes back to sort of like everybody, the dark side's always there, and you're always going to be tempted by it. It's even in real life, like you're going to be tempted to do bad things sometimes when you get angry or when you love something so much. But it's about making that choice. So the crime isn't in feeling the bad temptations or like feeling the pull to do the dark things, but it's in stepping back and saying no. So again, Kanan here like feels like anyone else, but again, when the time comes, he actually says, "Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make the choice to be better."
Awesome choice, and obviously we see And then it just says why Kanan's such a top level Jedi. He's obviously been trained well by Master Balaba. And then
Definitely,
it
100%.
goes, he's killed, and he says, it's over. The man who I killed Stance is dead at my hands, but there is no glory in this triumph. This is the first time I've ever taken a life, and he said he'd be happy if it was the last. And then obviously it flips through Smiles and Grey. They go and confront General Grievous, and they're able to beat him back, obviously to keep General Balaba safe. And General Grievous is able to escape, which he does a lot. He escapes quite a lot, doesn't he, really? Yeah.
He's quite a coward, I think, to be honest with
The
you.
Clone Wars, like 2003.
He always gives...
He's
I've
not
seen
a coward
bits
in
of
that.
it. I don't remember much
terrifying.
of it.
But obviously, George changed the character up.
Yeah.
And then we find out the Battle of Magneto is over. Like, the third Battle of Magneto is over, and he's lost his first friend. It's taken his first life. And it flips back to Rebels in the current day, and the Rebels are about to be executed, and this is when Kanan Jarrus wakes up in the back tank. The back tank shatters, and Kanan comes out, and he takes the stormtroopers down. And chapter 5 ends with the Rebels obviously beating the Empire back, and then we move on to the last issue of the series.
Kanan looks jacked in that last panel. Freddie Prinze Jr. looked very, very trim.
And then we move on to the last one, first build, part 5. Or part 6? Part 6. Yeah, sorry, part 5.
Part 6, yeah.
And we go, this is them leaving the planet Kala. This is back in the current day, the Rebels. They've left Kala. It's a good little thing. He says it's supposed to be a milk run, picked up supplies in Kala and bring them back to the Tarkin Town refugees on Lost Orb, but there were complications. And he said it feels like I've practically spent a whole year on Kala working through them. But then finally the Ghost Crew, it's on its way. And then we get a little bit of a side story here where Kanan meets Gamut Key, the Kala's provincial governor, and he's arranged for them to travel because Kanan's old friend Marvizo Moraga, he's the oldest friend Kanan Jarrus has, is in trouble and needs help. So they head to the
So this goes back to sort of Volume 1 where when Kanan lands on Moraga and that guy greets him, but it doesn't really show you anymore. But he obviously lived there for a bit and made some connections. And then here we go. We're getting that
they arrive
payback
on Moraga and he meets what's the name? Morphizo's wife, Morphiza. And we find out that his friend's been taken to land by the Empire because he's joined a rebel cell. And then this is where we find out that they've been keeping Kanan's ship here on Moraga, the Escape, which we met in the first arc. And Kanan takes the Escape and heads to land with Ezra in tow to rescue his friend. So they arrive on land and they find out, and they try to do the old thing we see in Rebels quite a lot: distract the stormtroopers while Kanan goes in and saves his friend. It doesn't go. Ezra tries to distract him, but it doesn't work because apparently these stormtroopers have got their heads screwed on, and they say basically, "We know what you're doing. You're trying to distract us, so we leave our post." So Ezra has to try and escape the stormtroopers, and he ends up getting cornered. But we'll get back to that later because it obviously goes off. And then Kanan breaks into the Imperial facility, takes down the stormtroopers, and says, obviously finds his friend. And then this is where we meet Vice Admiral Ray Sloan from the Aftermath trilogy.
Yeah, so obviously Ray Sloan's had quite a few appearances now. She's obviously in the Aftermath trilogy. She's also in she's in a novel, I'm sure. Yeah. Is it not A New Dawn? Yeah, the Kanan Hera novel.
This is why I think he says because obviously Kanan and Sloan have history, and she's like, "Oh, that's Vice Admiral Sloan now." He says, and we find out that Kanan Jarrus is actually a hobby because they've had a confrontation. If you've read the book New Dawn, Sloan and Kanan have a confrontation, which ends up on the planet Gorse. And she figures out that after they've had this confrontation, she thinks he's just more than a mouldy pilot. That's her words. But if you read, New Dawn's a good read. Like New Dawn is a good.
Yeah. So I mean, again, like that's the one that certainly pays off. So like, again, if you're watching Rebels and Clone Wars, you could totally pick up these comics and read these, and then buy a New Dawn and read that, and you'll feel all the connective tissue subtly coming together, and you'll get a really good kick out of it. So again, this day and age, and they've got nothing but time on our hands, so they've got to stay indoors. Buy these
I
books
think you
and
can get
trust
New
us,
Dawn
like
on like
you'll
Kindle
enjoy them.
for like £3. To be fair, it's a good read, and you find out like how Kanan met Hera and that type of stuff. And then Kanan is able to subdue Ray Sloane and escape with his friend. And then this is where this is a good little callback. They get back to the escape, and then Ezra's waiting for them to escape, and we find out Ezra was cornered, but then he doesn't go into any more of that, and he says, "Oh, I'll tell you later." So it's like it's time to go. So they escape Lamb, and this is where we get a little side thing where Ray Sloane is back at the place where Kanan has subdued her at, and someone says Vice Admiral to her, and she says not now, and then we find out it's the Grand Inquisitor. And he says, Vice Admiral Ray Sloane, I'm the Emperor's Grand Inquisitor, and I want you to tell me everything you know about your hobby. So this is showing that the Grand Inquisitor is on the trail of Kanan.
Yeah, so I think this story is taking place like sort of in the middle of season one.
It takes
I'm
place
assuming
before they have their confrontation on that Stygian Prime prison. I'm not sure.
I believe so. Yeah, I think it definitely takes place after they save the Wookiees. And I think it takes place before the prison.
Obviously they haven't met yet. Yeah.
So he's getting the information here how best to go forward with the plan to catch Kanan.
Says,
so they
trained under Jedi Master Death of Balaba and all that. So
yeah, so the information he gets here probably leads into more information, which also leads him in these why he comes up with the plan to set the trap. He says
in Rebels, he says, the temple archives are still complete.
Yeah. And obviously he was a temple god.
Obviously, so you see the reasons why he turned to the dark side in the Darth Vader comic, which is another great comic too.
It is, yeah. Very good comic.
They arrive back on Kala. Gamut Key has set up new identities and somewhere to live for Keenan's friend Morphe's or Morphe's Act, which is a hard thing to say. I can't believe how you pronounce that. Yeah.
I think you did all right. That's how I would say it.
Then we find out how Ezra survived, because obviously he's cornered by stormtroopers and there was no way out. And Ezra says some random guy helped him. And he says, I didn't. He says, who was it? Kanan's like, who was it? He says, I didn't think to ask. And this is where we find out that Cleve and Janice Casimir are still together. And Janice Casimir helped Ezra with the stormtroopers. And then Cleve's like, why did you get yourself involved? And this is a nice little thing at the end. This is the last thing. He says, it just reminded me of someone I used to know. And he's like, who? He's like, oh, no one special. And then you obviously see an image of a young Kanan. And that is how the comic ends.
Yeah, so it's almost like they sort of help the little kid out. Like he wants to help the little kid out. And then those little kids are actually connected. He doesn't know that, but they are. Do you know what I mean? So sort of by helping this little kid out, not only has he helped that kid out, but he's helped his original little kid out as well.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah.
So it's just a really, really nice touch. And it's good to see that like sort of him and Cleve are still like
partners, yeah.
Helping with, obviously, still scoundrels and stealing for a living and smuggling, but when the choice is there to make the right choice, they will help a little kid out against some evil troopers.
And that brings an end to the comic.
It does indeed. So, just to clarify, so we've been recording for 98 minutes now.
Yeah.
So, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So, just one thing. Sometimes I think this app the app I record with cuts out at 100 minutes. So if it does do that, don't worry. We'll obviously just we'll just start another record and I can put them together. So it won't be a problem, but it might sound disjointed if that does happen, guys. But bear with us. So what's your overall thoughts then about just overall?
I loved it. I thought it was great. Like I remember reading it. I read it first when it first came out in 2015. Obviously, when we didn't know much about the Rebels crew or anything like that. And I just think even if you haven't watched Rebels, you can pick it up and enjoy it. But obviously, if you watch Rebels, it's much more satisfying. But yeah, it's a very well written comic. It's only 12 issues. It doesn't feel drawn out. Every issue has a point, because sometimes with comics, sometimes there's certain issues they have to fill. Yeah, filler issues. There's no filler issues in this, and I couldn't recommend them any higher, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I just happen to think that the comic is hasn't cut off. That's good. We've hit 100 minutes. I was waiting for it to cut off there. I found like Volume 1, I thought was absolutely brilliant in sort of tying up Kanan's past to the Jedi. And that was absolutely brilliant in telling that story. And it really made us understand Kanan better, his connection to the Jedi Council and to his master and what happened during Order 66. So it really, for me, it tied Kanan to Revenge of the Sith very well. And then I found the second volume tied Kanan very well to the Clone Wars series.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And obviously both books connect really well to Rebels and the modern day time setting. But so that's what I found. I found the first book really connected as well to sort of the events of Revenge of the Sith and Kanan.
They would make great Clone Wars episodes, to be honest, the story. It would.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those ones where, like, would I like to see it animated?
Yeah, I'm not saying it shouldn't be. I'm just saying if it was, they'd make good stories.
Yeah. Yeah, they are great stories. Like I said, absolutely great books. So they would be really great. Makes you think that maybe if like they hadn't been so quick to cancel Clone Wars, they probably could have told these stories there. Like when Disney like purchased Lucasfilm, obviously Clone Wars was the first casualty, along with like Lucas.
Rebels was the first thing announced, wasn't it? Like, well, one of the obviously they announced Episode 7.
And then and then Rebels obviously was starting to get work on, but it's just like you could have easily told the story here, and then you've already got the voice cast hired for Kanan and stuff. Do you know what I mean? For Rebels, I'm sure Freddie Prinze could voice a younger Kanan. But overall, obviously, they do have all these other mediums, and like I said, I think like this story does suit comic really well. They had a really solid writing team in Greg Weisman. The art's brilliant by Larraz and Curel.
Yeah, so, it's definitely in my top 3 Star Wars comic.
Yeah, I think it's probably my top 3 as well. I think my top 3 would be not in any order, but this is one of them. I really love the Darth Vader, the second run.
That's my number 1, to be fair.
The Charles Soule Darth Vader run. Yeah, that's brilliant. Especially the Joe Castanew chapter. That was brilliant. Volume. Which is the second volume, isn't it, I believe, from that book. And then I've also found the Poe Dameron comics for me were absolutely brilliant and tying together the sort of adding some sort of story to the sequel trilogy. It's really good.
I think my top 3 is probably Kanan, the second Darth Vader run, and just trying to look through the ones here. To be fair, I did really like. I like the first Vader. I'm a massive Darth Vader fan, so I like the first Darth Vader run as well. To be fair.
Yeah. Have you read the third Darth Vader run?
Yeah, there's only been 2 issues.
It's like,
it's just getting started. Like, but obviously, there's. Yeah,
I'm a bit behind, so because there was another one, wasn't there? Like a one-off in the middle, is that right?
There's like a Darth Vader Age of Rebellion issue.
There was another one I've seen in the store. Darth Vader.
Dark Visions.
Oh,
it's not.
That's the one, yeah. Because it looked the cover looked a bit crazy, like it looked a bit psychedelic. Like, if you know what I mean? Like, it was a vibe I was getting.
Yeah, it's.
I was like, what's going on here?
Not very good, mate, to be fair.
Not very good. Oh, well.
No,
you can't have it all. We've got a lot of good comics.
I didn't like Vader Dark Visions, to be fair. It was just a bit weird.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's hard. Like, I mean, if you're putting teams together and you're creating so much content, like, not all of it's going to hit for everyone. Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah. So the second
definitely
Vader is running now, and it's obviously Greg Pak. And yeah, it's good so far. There's only been 2 issues. There hasn't been much done. The first issue was great because he goes back to old places like Tatooine, and he goes to Padme's apartment and that type of thing. So
good.
It's obviously set between Empire and Jedi. Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
But
I
other
love
than
stuff
that,
like that.
they're my top three. I really enjoyed the Kanan stuff. It was great, and I've got really nothing else to add to that, really.
Yeah, I just think like obviously, I think these comics are absolutely brilliant. I think definitely if you like Rebels and you love the family, and that's your go-to for Star Wars. Definitely pick these books up because I think they'll add so much more story. And especially when you see what Kanan ends up doing when he does commit that, it's almost like full circle. Where like like in this book you see sort of Depa commit the ultimate selfless sacrifice for a padawan, and then obviously, as we know in the episode Jedi Knight in season 4 of Star Wars Rebels, Kanan then commits the ultimate self-sacrifice act to save his found family. So I think like again poetry, and it is tragedy, but it also gives hope because that act then leads that team. Like Depa's sacrifice led Kanan on to helping the rebels, and then Kanan's self-sacrifice, which is tragic as well, leads that rebel cell on to, do good things and take out Admiral Thrawn, really. So again, sort of selfless acts that are for the greater good and do create hope in this galaxy. Not just deaths for the sake of deaths. And again, goes back to that I've just said, Star Wars support. Obviously, like Depa does it in this comic, and it shows you that. That's why I'm glad we get this story. And it means when you see Kanan mirror it and do the same thing, it has that a lot more meaning.
Yeah.
And I think it shows in that moment he's probably thinking like, "Joy is like Depa doing this for me, and I'm doing this for these guys, and I'm totally at peace with that." So I think it is like very, very powerful. It's funny I just want to mention so I've got a friend who listens to the show called Kelly, and she's been watching Star Wars Rebels, and she's just watching season 4 now, and she sent me a picture through the week of Kanan and Hera kiss that happens in season 4, and she was like, finally, and then like using all these like emojis like the hands raised, the praying hands and stuff, and like the thumbs up and stuff, and I was like, yep. And I was thinking, no, I'm not going to tell her. And then literally during this broadcast, like as we've been recording, she just messaged us saying, she just put big OMG, just watched the episode called Jedi Knight, and I just put sad face, and then she just sent loads of crying faces, and I was like, that's why I didn't say much when you sent that picture the other day. And she just put, I'm devastated. I just put, so was I. But don't worry, Kelly, because his self-sacrifice, his selfless act will be worth it in this fight against evil. I think that brings the end of the episode. Ian, to be fair, I don't think much else. I think obviously Disney Plus is launched in the UK. I'm enjoying it quite a lot. I think the interface is really easy to use, which was something I was worried about. I'm enjoying the content.
Not just Star Wars stuff. I've been watching stuff from the 90s. I've been watching the Mighty Ducks, the Cool Runnings and that type of thing. Yeah.
There's loads of stuff on there. I've noticed. We watched one called, my fiance Louise was like, "Oh, have you watched the Ice Princess?" I was like, "What's the Ice Princess?" I don't watch like a stupid Disney princess movie. Like, no, not saying that they're stupid, but just in my opinion, they are sometimes. But it was actually really cool. Like about this girl who's a bit of a nerd at high school, and she learns how to become a figure skater type thing. It was quite a cool human story. I enjoyed it, and like I said, the ice skating scenes were filmed quite well. So that was a hidden gem I didn't even know was on there, but I had all right fun watching it. Where can people find you on social media, Ian?
At Star Wars Ian, all lowercase, on Twitter and Instagram. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. So you can find me at Pete Hitman Hart on Twitter and Instagram. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Boars Star, so it's just Star Wars reversed. And you can also find the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Star Wars Podcast. So check us out on there and interact with us there. We also have an email address, starwarspodcast@gmail.com. Anyone's got any questions or wants to chat Star Wars, you can get in touch with us through that as well. We now have a TeePublic store up, So if you just want to, if you go to our Facebook page, you can get the link through there. But we've got some cool T-shirts available with our brand new logo available on, which the logo is awesome. I love it. And that was done by Adam Clark, who has a clothing label called Black Spell Clothing. So you should check them out as well. They do some really cool stuff. But yeah, I think it's the end of the episode. Thanks very much for coming on, Ian. I've really appreciated you coming on. You're basically like I don't know, you're a big part of the podcast, so I appreciate you spending time coming on. Makes my life and job
Cheers, mate. I
a lot easier.
It very much so. I love coming on. It's great.
Yeah, well, there's going to be more, obviously, not giving away now, but there's definitely some more comics I want to review with you and some more novels. And then, obviously, I think once coronavirus dies down, I think we'll get more Star Wars news, hopefully. Obviously, there's bigger fish to fry at the minute for the world. But yeah, so thanks for coming on. I see, mate. Like you're a pleasure, and you're definitely going to be on in the future. I'm going to be on loads more. Everyone who's listening, thanks for listening. Making sure you stay safe, guys. Like, maintain that social distancing. It's important. Like, make sure you're washing your hands all the time. Only go out if you need to. Like I said, I know staying in's a pain, but like I said, go and buy these Kanan comics, go and buy those Star Wars novels, get reading, because a lot of the content's really, really good. But that's it from us, guys. May the Force be with you.